Tell everybody how you had a plan.
I had a plan.
You did.
Maybe I didn't do the best job conveying the plan.
No, I think that was it. Yeah, for sure.
All right. It looks like I've taken a giant step backwards by tearing the entire truck down, but in reality, it's all in an effort to make this truck so much better than what it was before. You guys can see behind me, I've got the body off, I got the bed here, the cab there's a new tailgate, the engine's right here, and it looks like it's taken apart, and it is to some degree, but the frame is in bare metal, and I've got a bunch of inner stiffener products, a different header. There's all kinds of stuff laying around me. So in this episode, I'm gonna show you a little bit of the teardown process. Robbie was here a couple weekends ago, and then Taz and Sarah, his wife, came in and they've helped me and Sean a couple times over the last couple weekends to try to tear it down and get us ready to move forward. And this episode is gonna talk a lot about what products that we've bought, why we bought them, and why they're a perfect fit for this truck and what it's gonna be capable of in this iteration. There are gonna be multiple iterations of this truck throughout the next few years, and I know that. And so that's why some of these products may seem like overkill right now, but they're not. I don't want to do redundant spinning. I don't want to buy 2 different gas tanks. I don't want to buy 2 different engines. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to try to buy the best stuff, the stuff that I know is going to last throughout whatever iteration of this truck build, and I'm going to tell you all about them. So let's dive right into it. I knew that I needed to rip all the suspension off. The frame up here was just covered in years of like grease and dirt and mud. I call it grease mud. I can't stand that. I wanted to get a nice clean canvas to work with. I know I'm gonna replumb all the brake lines and all the fuel lines, not necessarily because they were bad, but I wanna do more motorsports oriented plumbing. So I didn't wanna be in there with all that grease and mud and grime. And then the deeper and deeper that I got into this, there was things welded to the frame, there was exhaust hangers bolted to the bottom of the cab. So I was like, all right, well, let's just take the cab off, let's take the bed off, and then that's where we've ended up, is I got everything off, and I had Roger, the guy here in town, sandblast this for me. So now we can bolt in the inner stiffener, which we got from Taylor at Tinworks, and I did kind of twist his arm a little bit to get going on these OBS inner stiffeners. If you guys aren't familiar with Tinworks, check them out. We've been using them for a few years on all the C10 inner stiffeners, and they do make a ton of everything else, but this inner stiffener for the OBS is specific to the OBS because the OBSs are wider and then they got a kick up behind the cab. So they made a pretty heavy duty inner stiffener, and it bolts kind of right behind the front cab mounts because all up in front of this cab is all box and pretty heavy duty, but the rest of it's all C-channel frame. So they built this inner stiffener. It's super heavy duty. It's got the transmission mount incorporated, and it kicks up. You can run big dual 3 or 3.5 inch exhaust through it, which is cool because we're gonna run a 3.5 or 4 inch single pipe. So we'll see how tight we can get that in this inner stiffener. And then they've also stepped past the inner stiffener, and they've made a tubular X member that goes almost to where the rear axle is going to be on the frame rails, or almost to where the coilovers would mount on the outside of the frame. So we'll show you that when the time comes to actually install that inner stiffener. But at least now the frame is all stripped and ready to go, ready to do the inner stiffener. I took the motor out. I wanted to just check a couple things, just typical stuff, you know, and we knew the motor ran good.
That'll do.
We saw it had good oil pressure. There's nothing wrong with it, but again, you might as well. So I've taken it down to a long block. I just pulled the pan, check all the bearings. I cleaned the pan out, and I'm gonna go ahead and Cerakote the engine. And then at the same time, we're gonna do a new water pump. The exhaust manifold for the turbo kit on the driver's side was just a stock cast truck manifold. Jim Browning at Ultimate Headers made me this mid-mount header that is specific for the LS motor into an OBS frame and cab, but we made it with a little bit smaller primary diameter and a smaller collector size so that this will cross over and feed the turbo manifold on the passenger side. And then I went on Summit Racing and I got a bunch of other new products that are just gonna mainly dress up the motor and give it a little better performance. It had pretty much a Trailblazer SS intake manifold on it. It had like an eBay throttle body and a stock-ish throttle cable. So I took all that stuff off. I did sell that stuff. And then now I've got a new carbon PTR manifold, a Nick Williams throttle body. I got Summit's bolt kit. I got Summit's steam tube kit and a bunch of simple things to include a low car throttle cable that'll just dress this up and make it like more, I don't know, reliable, better, more power, all that stuff. So grab that off Summit. You guys, I'm gonna step in right now and show you a clip that I filmed last week already for a reel, and it's got a lot of information on RideTech and why I chose all the RideTech products.
All right, everybody, I've got Ray's frame out being sandblasted, and while we wait for that to get done, I wanna show you some of the suspension parts that are gonna go on Ray. There are some awesome off-the-shelf suspension parts that you guys can buy that just bolt right under your truck. And with a little bit of custom work, we can even take some of that off-the-shelf stuff and send it over the top. Get a lot more geometry, a lot more forward bite, and a bunch of trick stuff. One of the things that I'm going to show you is RideTech's triple adjustable coilovers. Their sway bars, upper and lower control arms. And one thing that you guys may or may not know is that they can build you custom control arms. A tube, whatever length, with an R joint or a fixed end. You guys can get on their website and order those in custom lengths, custom ends. Looking into the future, I know that I'm gonna want to do some pretty hardcore stuff with the truck, so I went ahead and stepped up to the triple adjustable shocks. These are definitely overkill if you're just gonna be driving on the street or every now and then doing an autocross, but knowing me and my rate of progression, I always go off the deep end with my race carness, so I went straight to triple adjustables. You can also take a look at their control arms. All of the suspension components that RideTech makes are built by hand in Indiana. They've got good quality ball joints and Delrin bushings as standard options. Sway bar we got is a 1,050 pound rate bar. And then some of the springs that they sent to us are from Hyperco. And for now, we're gonna try 900 pound rate in the front and 270s in the back. These are those arms for the rear lower control arm that they built for us. They do have R joints in both ends so that I can adjust the lower control arms by just breaking the jambs and turning the bar. And they went ahead and sent me a pair of their rear 4-link brackets. This is gonna locate my lower control arm and it's gonna locate the coilover on the back of our new rear end. So anyways, that's all the stuff that we got on the stable for RideTech. You guys are gonna be so pumped to see this stuff on the trucks.
But we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna take all that RideTech stuff and we're gonna bolt it on. And then we're gonna show you how to calculate the geometry. I'm gonna show you X, Y, and Z of all the location of all the components. So ball joints location, the lower control arms, pickup points, upper control arms, pickup points. And we're kind of gonna get into suspension geometry and show you why we replace things or why you would put something in a certain place, like what the performance benefit is of it. So we're gonna take that bolt-on stuff and really kind of dive in with it. I am gonna do a 9-inch. I think that the calculations that I've done, wheel surface to wheel surface, it's gonna be 60.5. A 9-inch rear housing from Gear Effects, and we're gonna do a Detroit Speed floater kit. And you guys can see that stuff here. The floater kit that I like is from DSC, and it uses these C7 Corvette unit bearings. These are pretty heavy duty. They're made by SKF 4GM. And then you guys have seen it before probably if you follow us on YouTube, but it's got steel billet weld-on ends that we'll do to hold those, and then we'll have to get custom axles made. So that's pretty much frame stiffener, the engine cleanup process, and the rear end. So I do have to stick with 200 tread wear tires for a lot of the events that I do. That's as sticky as you can go and still abide by the rules. So now I've kind of stepped into working with Continental. I want to try out their Extreme Contact Force tire. This tire came out probably 2 or 3 years ago, and I just never had the opportunity to test it on the yellow and white truck, and I'm very excited to test it. Continental has Hoosier make these, so it's a Hoosier Continental partnering to come up with these tires. So they're very sticky. They should do exactly what I want them to do, and they're gonna be a 315, 30, 18. We will probably run into some kind of fitment issues with the front sway bar, some of the suspension components, but we'll kind of address that and get into it when we get into it. The wheels are very cool, and these just came out probably 5-6 months ago. They are Rocket Racing Flare wheels, and they're a simple traditional 5-spoke wheel, but they got crazy concave to them. If you look, you'll actually see a difference because this is their D face or their deepest face, and then the fronts have their C faced, which isn't quite as deep of a look or aggressive a look, but it's really going to be awesome, I think. So a lug pattern is going to change from 5x5 to 5 on 4 3/4, just because that's what all of these Corvette bearings are. And it was cool that Rocket does make these in a lot of different lug patterns. If you look on their website, they've got a big old giant chart, tells you what backspaces, widths, and lug patterns are available. And I saw on there 4.5, 4 3/4, and 5 on 5. So it goes all the way from Ford guys to GM car guys to GM truck guys. So a pretty cool wheel, and these are really budget friendly. I think they're $450-ish per wheel. So killer flow formed wheel that looks good and fits a pretty good budget. So that's the rolling stock. Should look pretty mean. Taz has done a little rendering for me that I may put in here to show you guys, and I think it'll look pretty cool. In planning my fuel system, it was a total no-brainer. I went with Radium Engineering for pretty much their full catalog. I've got their fuel cell, I've got their fuel rails, fuel pressure regulator, the fuel filler, fuel filter, breather tank. That's just an open atmosphere fuel tank. This fuel cell is probably the best that I've seen and probably the most specific to what I'm gonna use it for. It's a 14-gallon tank. If you guys remember my yellow and white truck, I had a 9.5-gallon tank, and it was enough capacity for like one road course, like 25-minute road course session, or I could autocross for like a morning on that capacity, or maybe drive like a half an hour on the interstate. So a little bit more is going to be perfect, I think. 14 gallons will definitely allow me to do longer road course sessions or not have to fill up as frequently like on an autocross day. So this is a bladdered cell. It's SFI, FIA approved, and it's got foam in it for anti-slosh. And then it's got a big surge tank inside the middle of it too. I did 3 Walbro 450 pumps. One of the 450s is a lift pump on the outside of the surge tank that can draw from the bottom of the cell. It'll pump into the surge tank, and then in there I've got 2 Walbro 450s. One to run the engine, and then one's just a redundant pump in case one of them goes bad during a race day or something. You're gonna see on the engine also their fuel rails and fuel pressure regulator that's direct mount to the rail. Their Dash 8 fuel rails, which is pretty simple, but the fuel pressure regulator is super cool. You can see here on top that you can turn the boost reference and clock it to whichever side you need it. The fuel pressure increase and decrease is just clickable here on top with indents, and then the return fitting on the bottom is clockable in 360 degrees too. So very cool, very universal, and versatile. The fuel filter is pretty unique. It's something new to me. The filter is inside of this. I've already screwed it down here to tighten it up, but it's just a Dash 10 ORB post-pump filter, but it's got a really cool like surface cooling fins on it, so it'll pull heat off the fuel filter. And then their breather tank is pretty cool. It's got 2, I think, Dash 10 ORB ports on it, and it's open to atmosphere. And unlike other cash cans, it's got a dipstick on top, so we can check to see if there's any fluid inside of it. And then their fuel filler, which is going to be cool. We're going to mount this closer to the back of the cab because the tank's actually going to mount kind of behind the cab or like mid chassis, kind of manage the weight better. So anyways, that's all the Radium stuff. Super stoked on all this. I think it's going to be premium for the truck, and I think sticking with that philosophy that I'm trying to follow this time around, which is buying the right parts in the very beginning, and these parts should last me through whatever reiteration of the truck that I could ever go through. In the next episode, you're gonna see us mock up all the suspension components. You're gonna see me bring a couple buddies in. We're gonna go over suspension geometry on the computer. We're gonna install the stiffener, and I think there's gonna be a lot of educational cool stuff to watch in that video. So I hope you endured this one. Just a little bit of a foresight and a foreshadowing into what's gonna be happening over the next few videos. But hold out, the next video is gonna be super cool when we do all the suspension and chassis related stuff. So anyways, see you on the next one.